Hey, what's up, Zach? Thanks for being here. So let's try something new and reveal some secret speed for less than $30. I think it's the best way to make your stock two-wheel drive 17.5 car a bit faster, and we'll try and help out people.
Well, Kevin, I'm glad you said that because really it applies to every class in RC, whether it's drag racing, on road, off road. What else is there? Well, that's really about it. It doesn't matter. The things we're talking about apply to pretty much everything RC, and I think most people will benefit from having these things on their cars.
Yeah, you're right. Mod or stock, but you're pretty much right. So in this episode, we're going to talk about mechanical free speed that you can use. Nothing fancy, no ceramic bearing kits at $90 a pop. We're going to try and make you faster or make your car freer for dirt cheap and just trying to take care of your stuff. So Zach has been building kits for forever. He's very knowledgeable about on-road kits. I'm fairly knowledgeable about off-road kits, so we'll try and tell you our speed secrets, and hopefully it helps you out. If you guys have any suggestion, questions, or comments, you can always drop them down below, and we'll be there to help you out. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about is to ensure that your car is free on a new build or on a rebuild. So what do you do technically on a new build on arms and stuff like that to make sure that your car is free?
So for me, so I've raced all the classes. I started out racing off road, and I went to on road because I like it a little bit better. So to start, I'll take out pretty much everything off the chassis except maybe the electronics, or anything that's not encompassing the geometry. So like maybe the steering linkage comes off, things like that. Drivetrain. So for me, I start from the center of the car and I work my way out. So maybe the center diff, or if you're doing a two-wheel drive buggy, it might be the motor, that kind of stuff. And then I'll work my way to the lower parts of the car, like the arms. So I'll put the arm mounts on, and then I'll make sure that the hinge pins or the pivot balls or whatever type of using with the arm on it moves freely up and down and doesn't have a ton of slot back and forth. Maybe you forgot a spacer, something there, adjust your wheelbase, things like that. You want to make sure that things are, they want to move freely on their own under their own weight of gravity, but not too tight that they don't move. If they're bound up, you're going to lose some speed in the corner. And also the car's not going to handle as well as you want to. So from there, move on out to the hubs. And then from the hubs, move on to the camber and caster links, depending on what you're using. Make sure those move freely on their own, each ball cup individually. And then together, everything together has to move freely as well as independent.
Good. Another trick I usually do he talked about plastics. What I do with my metals, so hinge pins, shock shafts, and ball studs too. I don't always do that on new kits, but I always do them on rebuild. I either use a Silvo and a cloth, or I use a Neverdol, which is cotton balls that are already soaked in a polish cream or something like that. So I tend to polish all my metals. So talk about hinge pins, pillow balls for off-road cars, or ball studs and shock shafts. If let's talk about associated kits. If you take the normal gold shafts and you polish them, usually they become as smooth as the chrome shafts. So you save a bit of money there. On a rebuild, you want to make sure that you take all of the dirt out and you bring it back to a natural, shiny state to make sure that your car stays free and that no dirt is going to get stuck on the metal. So that's another way of making sure that everything is nice and free.
Right. And so I like to do this with a Dremel personally and a little bit of polish. similar to what you're using. I use Mothers, but you use a typical automotive polish work well. So I use a bit of motor spray versus brake clean. It's just my preference. They both work fairly well, but you want to make sure you spray it away from your plastics and just on the metals. Make sure you get off the dirt and debris and oil and dirt and whatever else you got on the your metals, hinge pins, ball studs, shock shafts, etc. To make sure they're clean to start. And then I'll wipe them down, and then I'll polish them up with my metal compound in the Dremel, and typically just a little, maybe 1/4 inch dab, or for the guys in the rest of the world, about 6 millimeters in diameter. Just a little something, and you should be able to get your whole shock shaft or something like that on that, and then you should be good to go.
I usually just put the shafts in a drill, and then I put whatever compound on a cloth, and that's how I put it on, and then I polish it afterwards. So same difference, but let's agree on
Good
that.
clarification.
Yeah. Other speed that's important to do and make sure that could be something, especially in the stock classes, is to make sure that your bearings are nice and free. You don't need to spend a lot of money on ceramic bearings. Yes, they are very free, but maybe they are a bit more fragile sometimes. So what I tend to do is I take the seals off. I tend to clean them with in the ultrasound machine with a degreaser in general, not Simple Green, not brake cleaner, but something I use for bike parts. It usually takes away the oil or the grime or the gel grease that's in the bearings. And then I put some oils. J Concept does a good one. Assault RC and all your other brands that you might know. You put a couple of drops of oil, and then it brings your drivetrain very, very free. Inside your gearbox, you can take the shields off, but if you go on the wheels, always keep a sort of protection. So either a metal shield or something to make sure that dirt and dust doesn't go too much in there. Do you guys do that also for on-road?
Yeah. So typically, what I do for on-road is I'll take some motor spray, and I'll take my bearings out of the car, and typically I use a cheaper bearing, such as no disrespect to Avid, but I like their bearings, and they're $1 a bearing, and they seem to hold up well. But there's other brands out there, but I use a cheaper bearing like an Avid bearing. And I'll take my motor spray. I use the Performance, the Associated or AE or whatever you want to call it, motor spray, and I'll spray them out. So I use the metal on both sides because it's freer than the rubber seal. So I'll spray both sides, and then I'll take a pair of needle nose pliers, and I'll close them, and I'll put the bearing on top, and then so I'll open them, and then kind of hold them with my bottom hand so that the bearings right, and then I'll spin the rest of the motor spray out of the bearing, and if it spins freely, I use it again. If it doesn't spin perfectly free, I throw it in the trash. For $1 a bearing, it's not really worth it. Now, I will add one asterisk to this, and I'll say when I'm done with the bearing process. So when I finish cleaning them, I put a drop of this Schumacher brand oil I have. There's a bunch of good brand oils, like Kevin said, out there. This is just, again, my preference. I get mine from discountrcstore.com.
Shameless plug.
Right. So it's got Teflon in it. Teflon's pretty much the most slippery material you can buy publicly. And it seems to work really well. And that's just what I use. So I will say recently I switched car manufacturers on the on-road side. And this is where the asterisk comes in.
What did you switch to?
So I went from Gizmo to Awesomatics.
Oh.
Well, so I've been Gizmo is a small brand, small. And I really liked it, and I liked what it brought to the table, and I like what it brought to me. But personally, I wanted to try something else, so I switched to Osmatics because I had some more help and support there. And nothing against the Gizmo brand or anything like that. I just feel like where I was at, I needed some more help. So I switched to Osmatics where I knew I had more help, and I was able to kind of help myself figure a few things out. And now with the Osmatics kit, if you're running on road, I will say the ceramic bearings, for whatever reason, in that kit are more durable than the regular bearings. I can't tell you why. I don't know how. It doesn't work like that in every other car I've ever owned. But in this one car, for some reason, more durable.
So let's just explain quickly why. So in the ceramic bearing, the ball bearings, the balls inside the bearings are made out of ceramic instead of being made out of metal. Especially in on-road, sometimes the impacts are stronger than off-road, and they don't always tend to last very long. So they're very expensive most of the time. You do have a gain in performance, but in terms of durability, it's not always up to par with metal. So the way Zach explained it, and the way I do them too, is a good way to save a couple of bucks, but also have a bearing that's almost as performant as ceramic bearings. I don't know if you guys are going to get really feisty in the comments. Ceramic bearings or metal bearings require almost the same type of oil and lubrication and maintenance. So I just feel that bang for buck, again, talking to a new racer or someone that's not used to them, buying a brand new car and spending $85 of bearing in them is most of the time a pretty big upgrade. So if you clean them, you take care of them, you oil them properly, it's a bit longer, but you'll have bearings that last as long or longer and have something that's as performant.
Right. $85 on the cheap side.
I'm trying to convert US to Canadian, and I'm a bit messed up. So even more expensive. That's ceramic bearings are cheap, and if you hit a pipe or you clip a wall or you screw up somehow, it sucks if it's broken after a day of practice.
Right. So, I mean, I think worse than having a bearing that's not free is a bearing that's locked up. So maybe your bearing isn't completely cleaned out or has a little bit of dirt in it or something. Versus if you hit a wall, like a concrete wall or a pipe or something, you land weird on the surface and you break your bearing, that's going to be much more detrimental to your race than a bearing that's not as free but more durable. And oftentimes especially like off-road cars where there's more plastics involved in holding of bearings, you'll find like the plastic gets worn out and then you have to replace a gear diff case or a hub or something like that the bearing was resting in and is now completely gone because it got to 700 degrees.
One last thing, a clean car is a fast car. And by saying this, it's only for the gram. Making sure that you clean your car out prevents dirt buildup or dust going in your bearings or in your critical parts of your car. So that's a good way to make sure that your car is going to perform up to par, and you're going to have a long-lasting chassis. So I think that's pretty much it, Zach, unless I'm forgetting something.
Just a little bit. I wanted to go into a little bit about camber links and steering links, toe links, caster links, depending on what you're running.
Yeah.
So with the typical car, when you snap on your camber links or caster links, steering links, whatever, The position of the ball cups matter. And you'll find this with like a V-Link car, like Automatics. But it also plays a role into suspension travel, especially longer suspension travel, like off-road vehicles. So you want to make sure that the ball cups are like in the same plane about when you're adjusting your camber and caster, because you have one like this and one like that, you're going to have less range of motion and more likely that your ball cup will pop off when you're going over a jump or something. So if you have them like this, you're going to have more likely to pop the ball cup off or be not as free. But this, where they're both in line, don't mind my hands, both in line, yeah, yeah, something like that. They're more, they're free, and also have less chance of popping them off. And it's really noticeable in like a V-Link car, like an Automatics car, where you have like a camber and a caster link versus a caster block. So something else to keep in mind. And additionally, with these camber and caster steering toe links, you want to make sure that each ball cup is free individually, as well as when it's on the link. So typically what I do is pop one side on, make sure it's free, pop the other side on, or I pop that side off. Then I pop the other side on, make sure it's free. And I'll pop both sides on and make sure they're free together. So I should be able to move that link with my hand with minimal resistance. If it's not, I take a pair of needle nose pliers and twist around it just a little bit, just a little grip on them to try and free up that ball cup. However, you can't go too far and distort that ball cup, so you have to be careful and be patient.
That's another good thing. And one last trick is if you change one of the two ball cups, you should change both because they always wear in. I remember when you build brand new kits, most of the time they pop off really quickly. You hit one or two pipes, they break in really nicely, and they work together. So if you change one, you should change both. It's very inexpensive, but it's going to make sure that your car works together pretty good. So if we forgot anything, you can drop them in the comments. We'll be there to help you out and maybe discuss with you guys. I really like to thank Zach for doing this with me tonight. And hopefully that was a couple of fast tricks for you guys. One last thing. There you go. Shameless plug. drcproshop.com. You need to change your t-shirt, eh?
I'm getting some new ones made, but they're not here yet.
Okay. So yeah, appreciate DRC for sponsoring this episode. Hopefully you've learned something. And if you want some custom charge leads, use the promo code RC Kevin to save you some bucks on your next order. So thank you very much for being there, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye.